Hi everyone, welcome back to our weekly Instagram Live here. Today we're going to be speaking with Maggie Gomez. She's a certified financial planner. We spoke to her a couple of weeks ago talking about some tips that we could use to consider growing our money and improving our money mindset and management. And today we're going to talk about overcoming money blocks, and specifically for female entrepreneurs, women business owners, etc. So I'm excited to speak with her. Oh, good. We've got Ronnie here too, who was on with us last week. So this is going to be a good conversation. Let me just bring Maggie in now. All right.
Yeah.
So it's getting off to a great start.
Yes. Okay.
This
money
like
blocks.
A money block.
Well, this is something that's like such a powerful topic in my life because money blocks have held me back for so long until I realized they were a thing. I didn't even know about them. And so I think it's really important for other people to understand what they are and figure out how to recognize them and work through them, because otherwise they can be held back financially for a really long time, especially as an entrepreneur. So why don't we start with is it something that you've faced in your life? And then maybe you can share a couple that you've had, and then I will as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think if we're brutally honest and we shed the light on what a money block is, pretty much everybody's got them, because a money block is your beliefs and your stories around money and how they might be prohibiting you from expanding your sense of abundance, wealth, or your relationship with money, basically. And I think we get these as young adults or even in childhood, depending on our families of origin, our culture, etc. All those things are influences, our personalities as well. Some of us are bigger risk takers than others. But once we kind of shine the light on that and we build some self-awareness around what we really believe about money, and you can backtrack it to, where that belief originated or not. I don't think that's necessarily such a big deal. It's not really like pointing a finger of this came from here or this came from there. But when you kind of think about what your values are and what your beliefs are around money, you might notice that there's one that is blocking you from expanding your business, for example, which is kind of where we're headed today. Some of the things I faced in my business are really about that block of investing money without a set return. I mean, this is the entrepreneur risk, right? So how much money, how much risk are you willing to take on to get a perceived return or to create a perceived level of value for people? And especially in my business, and probably yours as well, like we're both educating and sharing information with people. So we're creating what they would call in marketing speak a lot of content, which is information that we're sharing, and we're putting that out there in the hopes of having more conversations with people and in the hopes of helping people through their own challenges. So today we're talking specifically about the money blocks, but that is a place where some people can get blocked with their business, is marketing it, and particularly in marketing it in a way that doesn't immediately feel like a sale per se, or like a cha-ching that, you've invested this in advertising or you've invested this in creating content, and you can't necessarily immediately see the return on that investment.
Often, I think with that another thing that I had struggled with early on is investing in courses to learn how to do the things. That was something when I took my first YouTube course, it was $400. And I remember just the anguish that I went through before making that purchase. And just to think because you typically want to make money before you spend money in the real world. But as an entrepreneur, it's the opposite. And it's really, really hard to learn to do that, because knowing that you have to learn things, and sometimes it costs money, and it could speed up the process too, right? If you get some help. So yeah, it was anguish. And now it's I took another YouTube course a few months ago, and it was $2,000, and it was not even a thought in my mind. It was like, of course I'm going to do it, duh. But like that first $400, I was like, oh my God, how could I do this? And you get used to it.
You got return on that. And so your brain said, oh, maybe this is like not as scary as I thought it was. So I'm going to, up it to the next course is maybe 800 or 1,000. So we get more comfortable with that, and we kind of break down those barriers and those blocks for ourselves by kind of testing. Some of us are more comfortable testing in little incremental stages, and others are ready to like make a bigger leap. And if it doesn't work out there,
incremental increases are definitely a great way to start expanding your comfort zone when it comes to investing in yourself, spending money on your business to grow like as an entrepreneur, or increasing your prices. You can do all of these things incrementally. That means like small changes, right? And that's what helps get acclimated to these changes in our life and to feel comfortable with doing it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of neuroscience and behavioral science research around that kind of incremental change that you're talking about. And really what we're doing is we're giving our brain a reward every time we take a little test, right? Like a little mini test, and we succeed, there's a reward. And so we're retraining our brain, and sort of, this is like mindset is the catchphrase right now, but that's one way that you develop a different mindset or growth mindset, is that you're constantly kind of doing these little iterative cycles of testing. And even if that little mini test fails, if there's a reward of learning in there where you've gained some awareness around how you're managing your money, then your brain is more likely to take another test, right? And not be quite as scared as it
definitely.
was initially.
I wish I applied this to advertising spend. That's one area, like by the time I was like, I thought I was ready for advertising, I just was just so sick of dragging my feet on everything. I just like jumped right in, and I hired an agency. I spent I want to say $25,000. And it was like, it still makes me so sick to think about. I tried to do exactly what you said, and it was a very, very expensive lesson for me to learn that I was not ready to have advertisement at that level in place. I did not have a lot of underlying things in place to do that. So it was an expensive lesson learned, but that's like what you said, like you have to at least learn from, if it's a mistake, it's a mistake, and you learn. And now it's like when I do revisit ads, I will do it incrementally this time because I'm still scared.
Yeah, and I think that also when we start our business, we kind of have this image or picture, and again, our beliefs of what we think it looks like to have a business, and so we want our image or our brand to match that. And we do. I made the same mistake as well in another business that I had started before this, where I spent a lot on designing the logo and the website and all of that. And I, learned a great lesson. And I think like when we're talking about this idea of the blocks, because in that case, we both invested, right? We leap and we kind of went for it. We put what we considered a large amount of money behind a specific thing. But the block kind of is happening, and that weakening of the block is happening in the learning and the self-awareness that we're building along the way. So I think that's what you want to be looking at as an entrepreneur, is that you're going to have these continual levels of self-awareness and learning, not just in your business skills and in the way that you invest, but in how you approach taking these chances and how you approach defining your business, right? Because you have a more clear and specific simplified objective when you go to advertise than you did.
And you have the systems in place to support that whole thing. So one thing that I've learned with money blocks is I actually took a course on this. Have you taken a course on money blocks by chance? I took a whole course on this that I did not realize, and that has been one of the best investments I have made, because it taught me how to, because when I first started, I gave away my services for free. This was several years ago. because I felt weird charging to help people with their money because I felt like I was at a good place financially. But then it was like this whole weird mindset thing. And then when you don't charge for your services, people don't show up. They will no show on your appointments. It's like such a messed up thing. But then I started charging. I charged $100, then $200. Now I'm at $400. And it's like, it's those incremental increases that have given me the ability to feel comfortable and know my value of the time that people spend with me and what it's worth. But anyways, I took a course to help me through all of this because it is such an important skill or understanding. And one of the practices that she had us do was to list out literally every single thing that is that like money block that you think you have, like anything that you think is holding you back or just preventing you from taking the next step in your business, and list everything out. And then after you have that list, you make a solution for that thing. So one of mine has been the negative consequences of becoming wealthy. And that has really held me back because it's like, how much do I give away? Because I want to benefit other people with my income, not just myself. But then that percentage is like always a weird thing to me. How much do I help my family? How much do I help my mom? Like, how much do I help others and how much do I keep for myself? And it's like, well, if you're not uber wealthy or even relatively wealthy, you don't have that problem. So I didn't realize that that was holding me back from going after wealth because you don't have to deal with it. But what I did in that activity was to list out solutions to those things that were looping in my head. So I'm going to I give away a certain amount of money to certain organizations. And then that was the other thing. It's like, there's so many organizations that need help. How do you decide who to give to? So I found one that they pool money and they give it to the biggest need at the time of all the organizations that they work with. And so it's taken that burden of decision off of me. But listing the solutions to your problems will help close the loop and let you move forward.
Yeah. That was where I was going to go with that, is like that's the little magic piece, is whenever anything is nagging at you like that, your brain is constantly ruminating on it because there's no closure of the loop. And so that advice that she gave you, and that might not be the exact closure, but just knowing that there's some way to resolve that issue within you, that inner conflict, right? Of, how am I going to give money if I don't have money? That sort of conflict. And then when I do have money, it's overwhelming. What am I going to do with it? How am I going to be able to maintain it? And honestly, that's a big money block for people as well. I mean, I'm sure statistically, I don't know what the statistics are, but winning the lottery does not guarantee that you're going to be wealthy, because a lot of people don't know their money blocks and they don't know how to manage the money for growth. That's a great example that you gave there of listing out those possible solutions to your own issues or challenges with money. And I think you also brought up another really important one, especially for female service providers, which is the amount that you charge and how you value your services. And that can be a serious block for people who are providing services where they used to be in a model where it was like 1 hour of your time is worth X. And that's not really a way to scale your business and help the most people possible in a 1 hour model per se. So there are a lot of money blocks that you kind of have to move through when you're coming up with a price, valuing your services, and feeling good and authentic about it, and not feeling like you're giving it away for free and not getting any return, or like you're overcharging people and kind of pricing them out of your. So there's a fine line, and again, I think that keeps evolving as well, just like your advertising keeps evolving.
Yeah. So I think for content creators or service providers, one thing that's helped me is to sit, like anytime I've known it's time to increase my prices, is when I get to the point where, or when I've gotten to the point where I'm doing something like the balance becomes unequal. Because after my calls, I spend like another 45 minutes detailing the call, giving homework, like sending an email, all this extra value. Someone's paying for an hour. And before the call, I prep for the call. And so it's like, ends up being a 3-hour process. And so then there's like a resentment that can start to build up. And it's like, oh, well, I don't feel like this, so I encourage people to think through or think how they feel about the money that they're receiving for the time that they're giving. And when it feels good, then you can feel confident you're at a good price point. And when that balance starts to shift, that's when you know it's time to increase your prices or decrease your prices if you've like maybe gone too far.
Yeah, there's definitely value in kind of the gut check or the heart check about that exchange. And I would just say that, consider how you feel, not just about the time, the immediate time with that client, but think about your overall life experience, because all of your experiences, all of your training and study, and your beliefs are coming into play when you're working with a client or a group. And so that whole background has value. And what's also happening in the transfer of awareness or knowledge, or, depending on whether you're consulting or coaching, when you're transferring that is where the value is transferred to the client, and they will continue to reap value out of that for years to come. Ideally, that's there with you, because they're going to change the way that they're managing money, or the way that they think about money, or the way that they attract money. And that's not just going to stop after they stop working with you. Hopefully, you'll build in some skills and some systems so that they maintain that in the long term. So what they're investing in their packaged, if we want to call it that, time with you is a specific amount of their time and energy and money, but that will bring a return much longer than that.
Yeah, exactly. Period. And that's what people are paying for. They want a sped up way to an accelerated process versus searching. There's tons of free resources. Anyone can learn anything for free online 100%. But if you want a fast track, you want to learn from somebody who has the experience in a very, very specific thing that can help you forever. So that's what, after I started taking several courses, I started to learn, like, oh my God, this is such an affordable way to learn quickly, because you get the concrete information without having to search around and like not even knowing what you don't know. In courses, they tell you what you need to know that you don't even know you don't know,
Exactly. And that's through experience, right? So you're paying for that person's experience and for them condensing that. And just as you shared with that first $400 investment in a course, it helped you go further faster. And that's really what we're looking for as entrepreneurs, because we're wearing a lot of different hats, and we don't have infinite amount of time, and we don't have even an interest in becoming super skilled in particular areas. So when we can invest in somebody else supporting us in a way that makes those dollars in themselves go further faster for our business, that's really important. Sometimes it's a do-it-yourself type program, and other times it's where you're having that work done for you. Like in the case of advertising, you're having somebody create ads for you and run those ads and maintain them. So yeah, a lot of different ways to think about how you're investing money in your business. How you invest money personally is also going to probably bleed over into your business. So you want to be aware of that. And then what you can do to unblock. And I loved your example of listing out the things that you think are blocking you or could block you, and then listing some potential solutions for those things, because that gets your mind out of the negative spiral and it starts looking for opportunities.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Okay, what else? Let us know, anyone that's watching, like any money blocks you have, things you've struggled with in the past, whether it's for your business or personally. Another thing that I've really a money block that I've had was and I don't know how to like word it other than guilt. Like I've had a lot of guilt with spending money. I used to always feel guilty. It like really didn't even matter how much I spent at the grocery store or at Target. I would always feel guilty. Like I should have spent less. And I learned that after researching, because I used to feel that way like all the time, but then I even felt that way as I got money and as my investments and my personal accounts have grown, I still felt that way. Like it didn't change. So what I learned was when you grow up poor or in poverty, that feeling of spending money usually means if you spend on something fun or unnecessary, you're usually taking away from a bill or a necessary expense. So in the past, if I went to the movies, I had less money for my car payment, you know, and maybe had to pick up an extra shift at TGI Fridays where I was a server and a bartender. And so when money is like, if you spend, you're taking away from your needs, then it can leave that feeling of guilt. So you have to learn at some point when you do have your basic needs covered, and then you are able to spend responsibly and not feel guilty about it anymore because you've got your foundation in place, you're saving for your future, you've got your emergency fund, you've got these things in place, and those are the things that you would maybe write down on your sheet if you're not there to help you not feel guilty if you do struggle with this, or if someone watching struggles with spending money with guilt. And then you can spend more freely. So it still hits me from time to time, but it's a reminder that like you have your systems in place to set yourself up for the future. So it's okay to spend this money, and it's good to spend this money. Get it back in the economy, enjoy your life and all that.
Yes, a beautiful point to bring up. And I think it's also nice to just consider that you may not have even grown up in an impoverished state, or your family may not have even struggled significantly with money, but your personality or just your way of being may be less inclined to take financial risk. And so you need something that helps you feel kind of clear and secure about where the money's going or why it's being spent. And I think you mentioned it first about the percentages. So sometimes we try to measure it out in metrics to make us feel better about it. But I think also it's important to really think about the clarity of what is important to you. Like for you, it's important to give back, and you probably have some specific areas that you would like to contribute to giving back in. And when we kind of narrow it in on that and we get a little bit more clear about what we really want money and energy and exchange to do for us, then again, that weakens those old blocks a little bit, because we're testing the waters a little bit more. We're recognizing, like even from our nervous system, it's not just, the head on top of your entire body. If it doesn't feel secure, then it's not going to want to act, right? If it feels like threatened by making a purchase, like even going to Target. And so sometimes we try to think through that logically with like a metric, but it may be a more emotional or subconscious response that is based on some type of trigger or fear that we had in the past, whether it was from poverty or just something completely different. So I think you're experiencing guilt around spending. Consider curiosity as like a little chisel that can kind of break down some of those blocks and fear, is just questioning and getting curious like a kid about where does that come from? Like, why do I feel bad every time I go to Target? Like, can afford to, have the basics, or whatever it is for you. Because honestly, it's just like every person has a different threshold. For somebody else, the basics might be $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million. But there's always going to be a little block that we keep coming back to. at every threshold. And so you have to kind of mentally, energetically get curious about
Yeah, it's
that.
like this work it's never ending. As an entrepreneur, you'll reach new levels of blocks, and just anyone, like you're going to face new challenges. And also with your partner, it's important to question, like, because that's something like you might have different blocks. So you have to question each other and understand each other. And so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not just the relationship with yourself that money influences, but it's also your relationships with others, those really close relationships like a partner, relationships with family members. And then if you end up having children, like how are your beliefs then kind of transferred onto them and how they manage money. So it's all it's all out there for the rest of it. Might as well get comfortable.
Yeah. And this is really random, but I just thought of this. Like, one thing that I hear people say all the time, and I used to say it, but I've tried not to, is I can't afford that. So I think saying something like, I'm choosing to spend my money in other ways right now is much more mentally appropriate and just like emotionally appropriate, because you can find ways to afford a lot of things. And there's things like you might actually not be able to afford, but sometimes it's like simple things. Like you tell your kids like, oh, we can't afford it. We don't have money for that. And it could be like a candy bar or something, like, because that's a quick thing to just say, oh, we don't have money for that. We're not going to get it. But it's like, we're choosing to spend our money in other ways right now, or we'll save up for that. So just like a little tip on that.
Yeah, the wording, the language is really important, because it comes back to how you identify your choices, your lifestyle with money. Are you a person who spends on that or not? And when you decide that there's a block there and you want to change it and you want to identify as somebody who's comfortable spending on that, you want to change your language around it. That the more you rehearse it externally with putting those words out there, the more you start to click in internally, because that's where we're, all that stuff, all those thoughts, we have millions of thoughts a day. So
that's too expensive, you can say, well, that's more than I want to pay, or that's more than I want to spend on that right now.
Really, things changing. What have we got from Dave? I'm choosing versus I can't. Yeah, absolutely. Does make you feel more in control. And that's like you're owning it. It's not happening to you. And so that can really be empowering instead of disempowering. And I think a lot of times when we feel that the guilt, the emotional guilt, it's because there's a disempowering exchange that's happening for us internally.
Yeah. Well, this has been such a good talk. I think it's such an important thing that I didn't even know money blocks were a thing. I would say 3 years ago, I didn't even know what a money block was, and just learning more about them and that they exist within us, whether we like it or not. And it's just like discovering them, learning how to handle them can really make a life-changing effect, or have a life-changing effect on how much income you make, how you choose to spend your money, and how you feel about money, generally speaking.
Yes, definitely. And I think just recognizing that, like you said, we all have them. And so it's not going away. It's just something to cultivate more awareness around. And over time, everything changes. And so we can change our perceptions and our way to work with money as well. And I know you help your clients with that. So that is great if they want to head over to you and get some more support in putting together some systems that are going to help them work. And then
how do you work with clients?
I work with women business owners in a 90-day group coaching program that's all delivered virtually online. It has both group and private components and coursework as well. But we go through 3 phases. We start with really clarifying what their vision and their values are, not just for their business, but for their personal life as well. Then we simplify that into specific daily habits and routines. And our 3rd phase is that we align the actions with that vision and growth. So we think like, oh, I know exactly what I need to do. I just can't make myself do it. So that aligned piece is really understanding, like in this case, there might be a money block there that we, didn't really realize before. And we might have said, I want to make X amount of money, but we haven't really broken it down into how we're motivated to take the actions that will lead to that income. So I'm like a details person. So if you want somebody to really get down to the nitty gritty and like every single little step or strategy that is going to help you make a change, that's how I work with clients. I'm really good at helping them get really specific about their time and the actions that they're taking in that time and where it's leading.
So very, very helpful and important, especially if you're struggling with any of that. So, and it's always just so good to work with somebody that has your back, like especially as an entrepreneur, there's like a million things we need to do, and having some guidance in like, okay, what thing should I do when and how is usually really helpful.
Yes, it's so good to just share it, because once you kind of put it out there, then you can more clearly see it depending on what type of learner you are. Like some people are more visual or auditory, but I find that when women discuss openly what their challenge is, they usually can kind of resolve it themselves. They just sort of need to think about it in that group space and feel comfortable, feel like there's some support. And there's a lot of collaboration and sharing that goes on too in group coaching. And again, it moves you further faster than if you're trying to do it all by yourself.
So this is just like, I'm curious as a business owner myself and expanding my services. I'm thinking about doing a masterclass. So, and having it be a group program, but so do you meet weekly or so it's 90 days. Is it weekly or how does that work?
Oh yeah. The format of my program is weekly. It's once a week, 1 hour session as a group. And then as each individual goes through those 3 phases of the content, that's clarifying, simplifying, and aligning. At the end of each of those phases of content, then they get a 30-minute private session with me. So that's what the format that I have found that has worked. And I've blocked it into a 90-day timeline because it's kind of hard for people to consider investing long-term, 6 months or a year in developing new habits and making changes. We all want that quick fix. But what happens is when people start to dig in a little bit, they realize that evolution of their habits still needs a little bit of support. So I also have like a maintenance program where they can enroll for an additional 90 days, et cetera. Coached for, like 8 or 10 years now in different ways. I've done one-on-one private coaching. I've done different models of group coaching. I've had annual memberships. I've had, 6-week memberships and 3 months and 6 months. And I've tested out a lot of different things. And you will probably need to go through some iterations yourself with your masterclass and really get a lot of feedback from the people who participate. So that's why I love to do like a beta run of your program. So it's sort of a soft launch in exchange for maybe a slightly lower investment. Then those clients who participate, they're going to be giving you feedback on what they think works and what they think doesn't. And then you come up with a second iteration, and it just gets clearer and clearer about what timeline works for you and what works best to deliver this information or to create the right type of stimulus for that self-awareness that we were talking about. Because, like we need repetition. Everybody happens so fast, but we really do need a longer time frame to make a sustainable change, not just something that's
especially with investing in finance, money stuff. It's like, it's such a complex thing and a lot of overthought happens. And so I would like to make it 6 weeks, but I think 90 weeks is more appropriate for really giving people what they need. But I'm hesitant because I think people will drop off at the end, or they'll think it's too long because everyone wants that fast answer, like you said. But what did you see from going from like 6 weeks to a longer one, to 90 days?
Well, you really want to be clear in your initial conversations with people. So it kind of depends on, are you, what's the objective of the course? Are you trying to get across information in a contained space? If you are, then a shorter program is probably going to be better for attention spans. But if you're really trying to cultivate a different way of thinking or managing money, then a longer time frame is probably going to be better. And you're probably going to have a conversation with that person because it would be a higher investment of their time and their resources to go through that with you. So the sweet spot, you really kind of have to look at your content to decide, is it 4, is it 6, is it 8? But I think if you're going to do a smaller thing like a master class, where you're really delivering some of those key information points for people, probably shorter is better. And then you invite them to, once they've kind of gone through that and they realize like, oh, there's still more I need to know, and I can know the information, but I'm having trouble implementing it. That's where the support of a coach or a consultant, that's what we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to help you turn it into lifelong sustainable systems and habits, not just information. So that's the way I look at it when I'm creating a program, is that value information, and they're going to then take that and put in the sweat equity to turn that into something? Or is it that not only am I giving them information, but I'm helping them think in a different way and actually act in a different way? And that creates a long-term value. And so that's going to require more of their time. The course is going to be longer, the commitment's going to be longer, and the investment is going to be more because the value they're going to receive is going to be more.
Well, thank you so much for that. I got a little coaching on the side there. So thank you. We'll have to tell people to fast forward to the end if they want a little info on this. But
no problem. Yeah, feel free to reach out again if you have questions or you're just testing something. But this was fun. I'm glad we did 2 of these, even though we kind of miscommunicated on everyone who has watched today or who will watch in the future gets some good golden nuggets out of this. I think you had some great specific tips on little techniques that people can use to break their money blocks.
Thanks so much.
So thanks for taking the time.
Bye. 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 Bye.